What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Fresh Podcast, where we bring everything fresh in entertainment. I am your host, Drew Brumfield. Join with me are my two favorite co-hosts. We got Randy. Randy, how you doing?
Absolutely fantastic. Glad to be recording another episode. It's been a little bit. I think you guys did one without me. So I'm back.
He is back. And we also have Seth. Seth, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to talk about movies again.
Yes, exactly. And I am also very excited because we are talking about one of my favorite, arguably my favorite horror movie. That is John Carpenter's The Thing. Not that 2011 movie, not the one from like 1989 or something. We are talking about the OG, the one everyone talks about, John Carpenter's original The Thing. It's such a freaking good movie. I'm so happy that we're already doing this. I wanted to get this out by Halloween, but through scheduling issues and other things, we couldn't. We're doing it now. We're doing it live. We finally are talking about this movie. And I am so excited because horror movies are just like one of my favorite genres, and I love nerding out about this. And I have so many. This is going to be a lot of repeat of what the Terminator one was, of just like. And then Drew lists off random facts that he finds cool about this movie. So I am super jazzed about it. But before we get too into it, I wanted to ask Randy a very special question, because me and Seth, this is a rewatch for us too, but it's your first time watching this movie. So I want to ask you, what is your what is your opinion of this film?
I really enjoyed it. I already knew that it had some pretty good special effects that I think have been able to survive the test of time. Kind of similar to my favorite series, Star Wars, of course, because I'm a nerd. But being able to see like what they could do with like using a lot of like prosthetics and stuff like that, like it definitely holds up very well. I think that was what was also interesting, was just the back and forth of who's the thing, pun intended, and like who's not, and being able to.
This is what it is.
Yeah. I do have some criticisms, but we'll get into that later. But yeah, it was very enjoyable. I think there was a good number of twists. It's not so scary, like in regards to the effects, that I think you couldn't show this to like younger. I'm doing air quotes around younger. Like, don't show this to like a 10-year-old, obviously, probably.
I think I watched this movie when I was like 12.
Yeah, awesome. Early teenagers, I think you could show this to them.
Yeah, no, this film's cool. Honestly, I mean, there are some like pretty messed up things, but nothing like I get well, like in today's standards, yeah, nothing too messed up. Back in the day, this was crazy watching. Before we get into too specifics, I do want to ask general thoughts from Major Seth over here. What are your kind of just overall thoughts on the movie after a rewatch? Your opinion changed at all? Did it strengthen, worsen? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think this was a film that was part of like my formative years, for better and for worse. Definitely probably shouldn't have been watching this as a kid. But I feel like that just kind of ends up happening all the time. I think it's a core memory of every young child growing up, where your dad does something like, hey, you really like Star Wars? This is just like Star Wars. And he puts on like the first Alien movie or something. So this film, I feel like, is one of those tentpole kind of like horror films that come out during like the 70s and 80s, which really feels like they are, you mentioned it earlier, this is John Carpenter's The Thing. I mean, it's not just this film, but like he also directed other classics like The Fog, Halloween, not exactly a horror film, but Escape from LA, like Christine, like all these like really classic films, and like you just kind of feel John Carpenter's like fingerprints all over it. One of my favorite things about him is that a lot of use of dark synthy soundtracks. Like he doesn't use too much music, but when he does, it's very impactful. And that's just like it always sticks with me, especially with like the thing, like sort of the droning synths in the background and like the isolation of the space, and just like everybody just being on edge with each other. It's really good. I also think this is a very thoughtful film, in my opinion.
Yes.
In terms of like its character dynamics and what it's like trying to say. And I feel like different people will watch this and come away with different interpretations of what this film means. But I love it for that. I mean, like this, obviously, yes, the special effects are a huge highlight. They, in my opinion, I think they hold up dramatically well, just because it's like watching it and understanding that it is all done practically. It is still like a feat of like, damn, how did they accomplish this? Like, it's so impressive.
No,
So I really do like love this film. I love its general scope. And I'll mention it later, but also anticipation of us doing this podcast, I did watch it's funny that you said 1999, whatever it's based on, but like I think you meant to say 1954.
Oh, did I say 90?
Which is,
I meant
yeah,
I meant 1950. My fault.
yeah, so, yeah, it's fine.
I think I got dates backwards.
Yeah, so in anticipation, I decided to watch the movie that The Thing is based on, which in hindsight is actually based on a book called Who Goes There. It is based on basically this is a remake of the 1954 film The Thing from Another World, which I think watching it now, it feels kind of like a typical UFO like 1950 set, fear of the communists kind of like alien invasion type film. But I think it still holds up pretty well, the original. And I watched some interviews, and it's very interesting to see the things that, no pun intended, of course. It's very interesting to see the elements of the original film that John Carpenter really loved. Because I watched some stuff about John Carpenter talking about it, and he said The Thing from Another World was one of his favorite films growing up because it did scare him a lot as a child. And it was what he wanted to do when he made The Thing, the 1982 version of it. He said that he wanted to make it a film that was reflective of the fears at the time, much like The Thing from Another World was reflective of the fears at the time. Without getting into like too deep into it, but like the original Thing was basically not really just based. I mean, the knee-jerk reaction is communism, and that's kind of it, but not really. The real fear is about the idea of science going too far unchecked. There's a lot of references to nuclear energy and the atom bomb. So really that original film is like a sort of film that's like a cautionary tale about science going unchecked, because at the time a lot of people were fear nuclear annihilation. So, and I will get into what my ideas about The Things based on, but yeah, obviously I really like it. I think this is one of just those great horror films that's not only a fun time to watch, but there's a lot to chew on in terms of its content.
Yeah, definitely. Because I also watched, and I'll talk briefly about this, but I also did watch the original 1950s one, and part of me does love that one because it has technically the same plot, but I love that every time they see the monster, because it's not like this one. It doesn't transform into it. It's just a monster in the lag. Their solution to it is just throw fire on it, which I just found really funny. Again, super. That's kind of like the theme for all this. Is just like it's super impressive for the time of like doing this many like fire stunts. Like just keep setting this one dude on fire over and over.
Yeah. If you're talking about that scene impresses me just because as far as I could tell, not really an action scene done like it before back then, where in that scene, the monster, which is just a big man big man with some makeup and a suit on,
Yeah.
kicking down a door.
Yeah.
But the physicality of it, the fact that a lot of it is like all contained in this small room, and understanding that they are literally setting this guy in this small little room on fire is bananas. Not to mention extremely dangerous, as if to make
incredibly.
it even better. Whenever they do light the thing on fire, there's also part of their plan involves them also running up and throwing kerosene on him.
Yeah.
So not only do they light this man inside a tiny contained room on fire, but they also throw quite literally more fuel on it,
Yeah.
which is just like, it's so crazy just to look at that and just think of like, my God, like
fire stunts have definitely, like, they've been done before that movie, but like looking around the time, not like that, not like how that movie is doing it, of like, oh, we are going to the extreme with this, and it's great, and that's kind of the fun about that. But going back to the modern one now, one of my favorite things is when there is intelligence in horror movies. Intelligence in horror movies is so it rocks. It's so freaking good. When you have, that's why I love the original Alien so much, and really even Aliens, the sequel, is because you have smart characters making smart decisions. They're just in almost an unwinnable scenario, but they think of clever ways out of it. I love horror movies, but honestly, one of my most annoying things, and it's a justified thing, is when it's like you make dumb decisions for the plot to happen. Just like, oh, we're running from the monster. Where do we go? Into the chainsaw facility. Like, all right, well, you're just doing that so that we can set up for a cool kill, which is fine because like that's what these movies are. But when a horror movie like takes the time to be like, no, how would these people actually react? These are most of them are scientists. They're intelligent people. They're not going to just freak out immediately and panic. Panic will eventually suffice, especially to some of them, but they take a methodical way. They think out a clever way to figure out who the thing is. And I love that. I just love when a horror movie like takes itself seriously and actually like thinks through its plot. Speaking of which, and one of the reasons that this film does so well is its main character, which is Kurt Russell, who is so freaking cool in this movie that he somehow makes the dumbest looking hat in the world, wears it incorrectly, and then
Dude, that hat's wild.
is still really a cool character. That's such a wild hat. Also, still 90% sure he's wearing it sideways. Like, every time I watch that movie, I'm like, I don't think you're wearing that correctly. I think the front's supposed to be, but it doesn't matter because he makes it cool. And I like him because like he is a person, like he makes mistakes. He does get scared. He's not like he's not like Snake Plissken. And he's not like just this complete badass that just makes every right decision. Like, no, he is scared and he panics with the crew, but like he's still like the smartest person that, or like the best qualified leader technically. And that's such like a fun moment. Also, I love the moment at the beginning where he's playing chess master and he just screw it and dumps the scotch into it because he loses. And that's such a good metaphor of just like, yeah, even if he's losing, he's just gonna flip the table, just burn it all. And that's kind of reflective of how the movie ends. Of just like, well, like I don't know if I can really win necessarily, but I can make sure we both lose. And that's so much fun. I love his character in this, and really like all of these guys, because really this film is just like a bunch of dudes talking to each other in a room, but it's still somehow like, despite that and despite this being such an old movie, that when usually older movies have really bad pacing issues where it's just like, yeah, guys sit in a room, okay, let's move the plot along. I thought this movie went pretty freaking fast. I mean, it opens with like them chasing what they think is a dog in the snow, and then the gunshot, and you see that one dude.
I say it started like that. Now it's just like, don't hurt the dog.
You think that? You would think that? No, they do need to hurt the dog. That's no dog.
This movie is against dogs. 0 out of 10.
It has the monster killing the dogs.
All right, you can continue.
Yeah, there you go. But I love that. I also love that after he shoots that first guy, his body kind of twitches a little bit. That has nothing to do with the plot or anything. That's just a fun little thing they added. And yeah, I think like the movie moves really fast and it gets to its thinging pretty quick. I don't know like the exact numbers on it, but I remember just kind of like watching this and I was thinking like, oh, we're already doing this. All right, we're here. We're going. We're in the movie. You know, we don't need. Not every movie needs like an hour of setup before you see Jaws. I think it's important, and I'm glad like this movie doesn't show the full monster entirely, but you can still keep the pace going.
Yeah, I mean, like this film was like about like I'd say somewhere around like an hour and a half, and around that scene where we do get the very infamous like dog scene. That happens around 20 minutes into the film.
Yeah.
So admittedly, like you're right. It doesn't take long, but also that's still a big chunk of the movie. But that's because this is actually not that long of a movie in the first place. This is only about like 90-ish minutes, I think, in total.
And also like that 20 minutes leading up to it. It's not. We're not just sitting around waiting for it. People are moving and doing stuff.
I think there's a lot to unpack with everything that's kind of like happening. For one, like whenever the cold open is really good. Like this helicopter chasing the dog, firing on it, you're just immediately dropped into it. You have no idea why they're doing this, and it's so crazy. What I like is I believe he's speaking. Oh God, they make a joke, and it's been a bit since I watched it. Like I want to say a couple of weeks ago, so I can't remember. I do remember they made some jokes about it, but it's like Finnish. Like he's like they're like what he's speaking. And they even have like a joke with McCready like talking with them where it's just like these guys are like Swedish. It's like no, actually there's Finnish or something like that over and over.
The running gag that they don't understand Swedish people.
Well, so the funny thing is people have actually re-uploaded that scene with subtitles translating exactly what the guy's saying, and the guy is basically saying like get away from the dog, you know, something along those lines, and he's saying like that's not a dog, and he's just firing. He's like get away, and people keep saying just like, man, if only someone on that base knew what that guy was saying, maybe that would change the complete trajectory of the film. I don't think so. I think the fact that this guy is like just suddenly appears and just starts firing and is losing his marbles, even if they did understand him, even if he was speaking in English, I don't think it would have changed the outcome. I still think
Yeah, even if the guy comes up and says in perfect English, "The dog is an alien." I don't think they actually because if you're still shooting in the air, they're still gonna like, okay, I'm gonna shoot this guy because he's crazy.
Yeah, because they think that like he's, and they mentioned that too, where there is an issue with which I believe is a real thing, where if you're isolated inside this like Arctic base for so long, people do get stir crazy, and there's been cases where people like go mad and like kill each other and stuff like that.
They call it like snow crazy or something, or that might not be in this movie. That might be in something else. But they call it.
They do have like a term for it. I do remember them mentioning it because it's whenever they're talking about it of like what the hell just happened. So I think I do think they have like a term for it. But I really like it. I like all this build up, that scene. I like when McCready and all them actually bothers to visit, like they go to the original Norwegian, that's right, the Norwegian base, and they go in and they find like all the corpses burned and like everything kind of in shambles, and then they find like the corpse, which is the two faces melded into each other, and then they also find like the video which shows basically them uncovering like essentially the UFO, where they like burned it out with thermite, which is actually cool because the video they show is like not footage from the original remake, but it's basically what exactly happened in the original film, where they find the UFO in the ice, they circle around it, and they burn it out with thermite. And that's the exact same way that they do it here. So I think that's like also a really neat nod to the original film that John Carpenter does, is basically having it be, in a weird way, the characters of the Thing remake watch a videotape of the original Thing movie when they're uncovering the UFO, which I thought was a neat touch.
Yeah, that's cute, little tongue in cheek. Yeah.
But I really like it. I like I said, I really like that build up. I really like I said, all this mystery. The thing is, and I'll get into why later, but like I think what makes the thing so fun to watch, even if you've watched it before, is yes, you will always remember that the dog is an alien. But there's like little other mysteries, like, oh, I forgot about this. Like when you do get to those certain scenes, and I won't get too much into it because I know we'll talk about them later. Those scenes of like where you're questioning who the thing is. I completely forgot, but I think it's one of my favorite quieter moments is while McCready and all of them, I believe, are at the base. There's just one scene where it just lingers on the hallway inside the I guess the American Arctic base. And then you see the dog come in, just kind of like walk around, sniff, go up to the door, and then you see a shadow of a person. We don't know we don't know which person that is. And then like the dog goes in and then it just cuts away. And like I imagine for most audiences when they first watch it, it's like, oh, this is like set in like a tone, but like just the voyeurism of it, of like watching this all happen and the way the dog kind of slinks around, it just feels very unsettling, and it's hard to pin down why exactly. And I think it's just so well done. It's one of my favorite quieter moments, and it really shows the skill of a director who's able to take something so small and make it feel so, in my opinion, unnerving, and just adding to that atmosphere even further.
Yeah, because a lot of this film and a lot of what people talk about is like the big giant practical effects, like, you know, the dude with the stomach belly and the dog and the thing at the end. But you are right, like most, like this movie is filled with like quieter and creepier and more like subtle fear. This kind of like fear of the unknown, like what's that? What is that? Who are you? What is anything?
It reminds me a lot of like the original Alien, where like it's not just the alien you're afraid of, but it's just the space you live in. It's just so claustrophobic, everything, that it just really adds to that element that like you truly feel like the characters here, they are stuck. They are stuck in this place and there is no reasonable way out. That's what kind of makes it so effective and such good horror. Another thing I really like is, and I don't know how much this is true. I mostly see it like a lot of hearsay, but I do agree. Props to the dog actor for being so unlike a dog, because like the way it just like it doesn't really bark, it just kind of slinks around and stuff like that. It just doesn't act like a normal dog, and a lot of people point out like, yeah, that kind of does feel like does feel like like an alien trying to be it. And from what I understand from like some of these comments, is they say that apparently what they actually have a half-breed wolf dog, like not a full-on wolf, but like a wolf dog. So that's why he's like not quite so, I guess, dog-like. But also they said that this dog, I can't remember his name, but the dog actor was so quiet that a lot of times people on set, like actors and all of them, would freak out because he would just kind of just walk in without anyone catching him. And they'd be like, oh shit. So like the dog was already kind of creepy to work with in the first place. Not that he's a bad boy, he's just naturally like that. He was very quiet. So it's kind of neat that also adds to it as well.
Maybe he was just like he was a real alien.
So like I know that like we're all like there's an element of like we want to kind of get to the good spooky bits already with like a horror film, but I think build up is so important, and I think this film does it very well, where it builds on these things, but it doesn't feel like it's treating its audience like idiots. Like it feels like it's giving you just enough to work with to figure out what's going on, but doesn't like over explain things. It doesn't over explain why characters do something. So I really like that. I like that element. I also, to add to your point about like characters acting dumb in horror films, I truly believe that was largely in part because of the slasher film craze. Because like even watching the very first the very first, like The Thing from Another World, a lot of the characters are smart. Yes, one of the big problems is the scientist who keeps insisting we should talk with it, we should communicate how much we can learn from it, and he kind of basically largely causes a lot of the issues on base because he kind of keeps self-sabotaging them and then making the creature get into like potentially hurt people. But beyond that, yes, like I think everybody in this film is smart, and the thing is they're all taking reasonable like actions and planning things, but at the same time, one, you're right, part of it is the paranoia that gets the best of them. But it's also the fact that they're working against something that they don't understand.
Yeah.
Like that's another element of this film, as I think it almost lends itself to cosmic horror, where just when you think you finally have this creature, this thing figured out, it pulls out a new trick. It either gets bigger, it splits itself apart. One of the craziest revelations about the thing is that every cell in its body is an independent organism.
Yeah.
That's why the blood test works, and that's such a crazy idea to think of, that like it's that it kind of betrays itself because every part of it wants to fight to survive, every single bit.
Yeah.
And also every part of it wants to assimilate, devour, and kill whatever is in its path. And that's just so well done. That, like I said, that's what makes this good, effective cosmic horror, is that like the scope of what this thing is capable of, it almost feels limitless. It's like when you realize that the alien can, it's like the chest burster scene. Like no one understood what the hell this thing was doing at the time. So whenever it does something like that, like rips itself out of someone's chest, you are not expecting that. You're not expecting that it would basically fake a heart attack so then it can open up its chest to become a giant maw and like eat this dude's arms. Like you're just not expecting it, and that's what makes it so impressive.
Yeah. So speaking about the thing, the actual creature itself, I wanted to talk about, and this isn't my theory. This is a theory that I saw online, but one I really like, is kind of the idea that you don't know if you're the monster or not. And it's basically a thing like when the thing takes over, it takes over completely. So you don't remember it taking you over. And even it itself believes that I'm Dave, I'm whoever, I'm the person. And it isn't until its life is threatened that it kind of kicks back. And then it remembers, like, I'm a monster, I gotta go now. And that's like kind of like a little, I don't know, it's a little cool like fan theory. It doesn't really change a lot, but it's just kind of a fun idea of like all these people panicking and accusing each other, and like the people who are just scared are genuinely scared and fearful of their life because they don't realize that they themselves are the monster.
That is an interesting idea, just because. So you make that, you pointed that out. Actually, in the book, Who Goes There? I should point out the Thing movie is much closer to the book than The Thing from Another World was. The Thing from Another World basically did its like own kind of thing.
Yeah.
Pun intended. But like the thing
Can't say it
here
every time.
is, but one element that they don't do, or at least not outright have in this movie, is that the thing and Who Goes There, the original novel, actually has telepathic powers. So it can mind read what people are thinking about it. And I think that's part of like how it's able, now granted I haven't read it, but from what I understand, that's also part of like how it's able to impersonate, is basically reading the minds of like people and knowing like, okay, this is what I should say because this is what they think of this person and stuff like that. Um, Granted, like I said, I've not read the book, so I don't know if that's exactly what it is, but I do remember that was like one of the key elements of the creature that John Carpenter didn't keep in the movie. But I do like that idea where some people, and I can see how you could read into this, is they wanted to approach this creature as like entirely just animalistic. And I like that it's kind of vague enough to where we really don't know. I mean, it did write in on a UFO, but at the same time, do we even know if it was actually the creator of the UFO, or was it a creature just found by a different alien species?
It
Like
also
we don't.
It was smart enough to at least try to recreate the UFO. That's the other part. So it's I always view the thing as it is like sentient to a degree. Like it does know its surrounding and is trying. Because again, if you look at it from its perspective, it is just really trying to survive. It doesn't really. Now it might go a little overboard and like, it does kill everything. But there is technically an argument for this thing of just like it's self-defense because it's kind of backed into a corner and it's scared. Because it doesn't need to kill. It doesn't need to kill these things for like food or nutrients, or like it's not trying to like probe them for information. It's just attacking because it's. I've always read it as it doesn't understand what's happening, and it's just kind of lashing out. Yeah.
For me, I read into it as potentially that is the nature of this creature, is that it has to, and I mostly think of that because of the scene with Blair where he kind of does which is very funny that like of course he has a computer program in 1982 that could run a thing of just like, oh, take this alien cell, now do a replication of what it'll happen to like the rest of the Earth if it like gets in contact with other like.
They'll die in 3 years.
Yeah, and it's like everyone wiped out. Yeah, in 3 years. It's like, man, that's a crazy ass computer you've got that's able to do all this shit.
How did that? I want to see your math on that, by the way. How did you get that number? Where did you get that? Where'd you pull that from?
Yeah, I know it's crazy where he gets that from, but yeah, like, but one of the things he runs a test on is he's like, okay, if this thing reaches human civilization, how quickly can it spread? And it's like, I feel like it's part of its very nature as an organism is that I assume it needs to, if for some reason whether it's like in order for it to live or just by its just nature, it needs to spread itself. It needs to assimilate more organic matter and to like make more things become the thing. That's at least kind of how I sort of like read into it.
Yeah. But
yeah, that's another potential thing. One thing I keep hearing about, and I'm not sure is entirely true, is some people claim that whoever is the thing never talks because they don't know how to talk. I don't believe that.
That's not because
there's a lot of parts. Yeah, I think that's like one of like that's where you always have to be careful with like people who like to do movie details and share them.
Close to right. No, that's very wrong.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident that like there like a lot of the times whenever it's the thing that it can talk.
Yeah. Unless the idea is like it doesn't talk on its like first day, but no, even then I'm pretty sure that's not accurate.
I think where it comes from, and granted, this is like interviews with like actors, because like I said, I did decide to do some behind the scenes stuff and found like a lot of actor interviews because it's kind of cool whenever you see so many actors who even many years later still clearly love that they got to work on this film, like both John Carpenter and Kurt Russell and the guy who plays oh my gosh, I cannot remember his name, but he's the guy who like stomach opens up into like the teeth.
Oh yeah.
Um, and he has a really good interview where he talked about kind of the process from like um, from John Carpenter and the writing team, where basically as they were filming the movie and they were given the script, no one knew who the thing was uh, until that person had that scene where it kind of gets revealed. So basically, like everybody has to be like very tense and kind of paranoid and unsure because they have to make sure that like like you have to make sure that your characters constantly think it's like, well, I think I'm not the thing. So that probably feeds into that idea where like maybe the thing like makes it so that some part of them doesn't think they're the thing until it's too late. Um, so I agree. I think that's like such a it's like the notorious scene with like John Hurt with like Alien, where they always everybody talks about how like, oh yeah, Ridley Scott didn't tell the rest of the crew except for John Hurt that this scene was happening.
Yeah, so it's a genuine reaction.
Yeah, but like I do like that, and I do buy into that because I think a lot of things are open. Because that guy, for example, whose stomach opens up, one of the scenes beforehand is where the guy with the revolver, the I guess the kind of the security dude, said like tries to offer him the gun. He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, fellas, I can't do that." Like,
Oh no, that's the chief. That's the guy in charge.
right, the security chief.
No, no, like not just this. He's the chief of the station. He's their boss.
Oh, so you're saying that like the guy who he was trying to give the gun to, the guy who basically rejected it is the chief of the station.
No, wait. Wait. Unless I'm confused, the guy that has the firearm, because this is a military base. The guy that has the gun, and who also is like he's the only one that has the key to this locker. Who everyone at first kind of thinks is the thing because there's only two people that could have opened it, and you currently have the key. That guy, his name is Palmer. I'm fairly certain, and again, it's kind of left ambiguous of like everyone's job except for obviously the helicopter pilot. I'm pretty sure he's like the guy in charge. And then when he gets the gun and tries to hand the gun over, that's him saying like, "I'm stepping down from command."
I don't know if I would say it's a military base, because I don't know if that's ever said anywhere. I think it is just like a research station. It does say here that, and I think you're thinking of someone else because it says here Palmer was the assistant mechanic.
Or I might be getting names. I don't know.
But I think what you're thinking of is Gary as the station commander, which.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
It's weird because I'm looking at an IMDb page, and a lot of these guys do not look like what they did back when they filmed this movie, except for Kurt Russell, obviously.
Right. Yes. So Gary is the man with the gun who shoots the Norwegian at the start of the film.
Yes, that's
he is. Yeah, he is the station. Yeah, so he is the station commander.
Yeah.
So yeah, like,
he's the boss.
Like I said,
yeah.
I get the feeling that this isn't really a military outpost. This feels more like a research station because I'm reading up also a lot of these other positions here, and a lot of them are names like the chief mechanic, the chief biologist, like stuff like that. These seem more.
Yeah, it's not really military, but it is like a government.
I would say
research lab.
Yeah, no,
because Kurt Russell's character is. Or at least it's kind of implied that he is from he fought in Vietnam. He was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I could see that. I feel like the only one that's really shown for sure to maybe be military background is maybe Gary for sure. But yeah, I could see that. Because in general, like these are just a lot of them are either scientists or mechanics. That's basically what you've got with like most of the station here.
Yeah, I guess not so much military, but government people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like that's just that's splitting hairs, honestly, in terms of like details.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I don't know, like I feel like we're talking a lot about characters, and I kind of want to bring Randy into this. Like, Randy, was there like a particular character you got like? I don't know if I could say attached, because a lot of them get killed off.
Say it's a pretty short film to get attached in.
Yeah,
I mean,
but was there any character that particularly interested you the most? Like in terms of like whether it's their performance or maybe how they tried to hide themselves as like the thing.
or at least had like a standout moment.
I actually enjoyed the I think he was called, was it Doc? The person who initially like freaks out, he like takes the gun and is like,
Blair,
"You won't understand."
Yeah,
Blair.
Dr.
Yeah,
Blair.
Blair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That guy.
Blair I actually enjoyed because I felt like while yes his outburst was quite dramatic, it was also like somewhat, I wouldn't say rational per se, but almost justified.
He does feel like
it feels realistic.
Yeah, he does feel like he's the only one that truly understands the scope of what could happen. And that kind of plays into what Drew was saying earlier, because it's kind of revealed later that he is a thing.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe someone infected him, but maybe from the start he was infected, and that part of him that's still like human was basically like, oh my god, I have to like sabotage us because none of us can be allowed to leave.
Yeah.
Any of us could be a threat, which is, yeah, that adds even more to his character. I do like Blair, honestly, looking back on him more, because I agree with Randy. He's the only one that understands the scope of their situation.
Yeah, he felt realistic, and I must have. Wait, at what point? To be fair, I've slept since watching this. Wait, at what point was it showed that Blair was infected? I thought
he's the last one. He's the last one.
Very end of the film.
Because remember, after the scene of the blood, and they're like, well, there's still one guy left, and they go to check on Blair, and he's not in the storage room, and they find that like underground thing. Yeah, it's implied that when they lock it's not implied.
Never
you
mind.
see that he was building a spaceship.
Yeah,
for some reason I thought at one point it looked like he was gonna hang himself.
Yeah, okay. That was also, I had a thing
I was confused.
I had a thing in my notes.
For some reason I was like, wait, did he hang? I thought he hung himself.
No, because I actually even have a thing in my notes, and I was gonna just bring this up later. It's not even like in focus; it's in the background. But it's during the scene where Kurt Russell like goes to like check on him, and he's like, "Hey Doc, how you doing?" And like Dr. Blair's just sitting there eating a can of beans, and there's a freaking noose just hanging behind him, and I'm like, "What is that?" We're not going to talk about that.
Like, he's very calm. He's like, I wasn't good. I'm better now. So I would like to come inside.
So there also,
and there's like a noose hanging in the background.
Yeah. So there also is a theory. So that's a funny joke. Well, it's not really funny, but it's kind of messed up. It's a little dark humor.
It's darkly humorous.
Yeah.
I think it's. I agree.
But there is another, and it contradicts my even previous theory of you don't know. Is the other theory is that Blair was infected. He just hadn't fully turned yet on the time of his freakout. When he was put in the locker room, he was gonna hang himself. But by the time he finished, or maybe even like when he did it, the creature took over and basically stopped him, or just survived, because that wouldn't kill it. So that's a little kind of that is kind of like a small theory of just like Blair either realized when he was in the thing that he was infected, or kind of deduced like it's probably likely, like either way I shouldn't do this, and then the thing stopped him. So that's why it's just sitting there and he's just eating a can of beans like it's nothing.
Yeah,
just eating a can of beans.
Yeah.
Randy, I'm glad you pointed him out, because my kind of go-to characters is obviously it's Kurt Russell's McCready and Keith David's Childs. Those are like the two characters I usually go towards. But I'm glad you pointed out Blair, because that's a good point. Blair is like really crucial to the plot, and I really like him a lot.
I really enjoyed Blair a lot.
Me personally, I like Gary a lot, just because it does seem like he is like dealing with all this bullshit being stacked on top of him, like on top of him being the station commander. But he has probably one of my favorite line deliveries where they do the blood test and he's cleared and he's like very calm and just like, gentlemen, whenever you get the time, I would like you to untie me. What was it he said?
From this goddamn couch!
Yeah, from this fucking couch like that.
And he starts like jumping out. So bad.
Yeah, I think this movie, we talk about as one of the greatest horror movies, but I agree. I think there's a lot of actually like good humor in this, like the bursts, the outbursts, and stuff like that, and just the general paranoia. I love it. Like, it's also part of them being smart enough to know what's going on, but also like, but also just being funny. Like, I think of the scene where they initially leave with that one guy who goes up with McCready, leaves him out because he claims like, hey, I found like his drawers and it has his name on it, and McCready comes in and there's like a standoff between them, like all like about to like basically shoot each other, and McCready says like, you think if I was the thing I'd be dumb enough to leave my fucking clothes with my name on it out in the snow? Like, it's clearly trying to like fuck with you guys, which, well, granted, that's also part of the paranoia, but I just love that like they're constantly like, you dumb motherfucker.
No, you're the thing.
It's like half of their interaction.
No, you're an idiot. Why would I be the thing if I didn't know you're the thing? It's great. It's so fun.
I do believe it's Palmer, the guy with like the sort of the sleeveless denim jacket, but he is like talking about that one dude where he's just like, it's like they're signing who goes out with you. It's like, I'm not going out with what's his face, and they just immediately go into it. Yeah, it's just like, what the fuck? Fuck you.
Yeah, I do love it because everyone. Windows, by the way, I remember because he has a funny name, but he's the one that kind of initially, and I think it's the reason I thought it was a military base, because there's just a shotgun, like an emergency shotgun in the corner. He immediately, when he realizes, like, he kind of clicks what's happening, he immediately bolts to the gun. And like everyone's got to stop. Like, Windows, calm down. He's got a shotgun that I don't even think is cocked. So I don't think, like, he doesn't know how to use it. He's just pointing it at people, and that's why everyone's like, I am not hanging out with Windows. The guy gets freaking crazy.
Well, also, it's kind of shown in the film earlier that like Palmer and Windows, even before the thing arrives on base, do not kind of get along with each other already.
Yeah,
there's a couple there's a couple of bits of that, which I like. That's another thing, is they don't dwell on it too much, but like they very clearly establish that there are relationships, and like some like the others more, and some that just outright just don't like each other. Like, I think even from the get-go, there's already like a sort of weird like, and I think it's just like maybe a little bit of a rivalry, or just a general like, I don't really care for that guy feeling between like Childs and McCready, even though they're also the two most competent people on base, which is funny that the two most competent people on base do not trust each other.
Maybe it's just trying to be an alpha thing or something.
I also think a lot of it is because like both of them, because I think it's kind of implied that both of them are from us, but they're both from kind of the Vietnam era, and like they both have like military-ish training, so they're kind of almost trained to be like always suspicious. Which does actually, I want to point out one more person, and again I'm confused on his name. It's either Clark or Fuchs. Which one's like the dog trainer?
Right?
It says, yeah, it's Clark.
It's Clark? Okay. I love Clark also because he's kind of like the red herring. He's kind of the one that people like Dr. Blair and
That's
a lot
true.
of people...
I instantly thought he was infected.
Yeah.
Like, as soon as we see the dog like walk down the hallway and it's like that ominous thing, I was like, okay, something's up with the dog.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, why would they show this scene?
And there's lines later on.
I thought it was Clark
with that dog.
I thought it was Clark's shadow, to be honest.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I think that's what most people would assume, which is natural because like he's the one that goes out of his way to protect the dog when it's getting shot at.
Yeah. Because he's the dog. Well, it's because and you find out later, it's like because he's the dog trainer, because he likes animals. And I like Clark so much because like you're kind of led to always suspect and like disbelieve him, but like on a second viewing, when you look at his perspective, I was like, Now he's just like genuinely scared, and like the moment, like one of my favorite moments of this film is when they're doing the blood, or like about to do the blood test, like they haven't done it yet, and it's just kind of a really point of high tension, and Clark, like they don't know that he has a knife, and he goes to try to run from McCready, and he gets shot on the head, and it turns out it's like no, he was a regular, like they shot, like our main character murdered a man, again like self-defense, but he shot a human.
It shows like how bad the
kicked.
tensions are already whenever one of them, who not even is the thing, is already made, like he had already convinced himself somehow that McCready was the thing, and he's like, I'm taking him out now.
Yeah, even though like, buddy, what are you doing with a box? What do you think you're gonna do with a box cutter against that thing? Even if you're right, like, what are you doing?
Well, like I said, none of them understand the scope of this creature yet.
No, not. But I also like that moment, and then when they're actually doing the test, I think it's Childs that says like, "Congratulations, you just proved you killed a real," or you just, what do you say? He says, "Congratulations, you just proved that you murdered a man." As he like when he does Childs, and like it's a regular person, and it's I love that. I love that scene. Also, like just like McCready's face of just like, he's right, but I gotta keep going. I got more samples to test. He just like puts it down and just like doesn't break eye contact. It's so good.
I think that's like just a big part of McCready's character too, is he kind of comes off as very stoic, and I think it's like one of the reasons he is. And I'm not the first. I'm not going to take credit for this. I'm not the first person to point this out, but I think one of the reasons why he's kind of our quote main hero, our main protagonist, is because what makes him the most capable is he doesn't really have a close relationship with like most of the other guys on base, because we constantly see him by himself. He records the log by himself. He's even the only person, as far as I can tell, who has a living quarters that is its own building.
Yeah, so I think the idea is he's the only one that's not a scientist. Well, other than the cooks, he's just a helicopter pilot. Like he's not a scientist. Like the rest
but at
of
the
them.
same time, he, like out of all the targets, he's probably the most important one that the thing needs to get to, is because assuming the spaceship idea doesn't work, he is the pilot, he is the helicopter pilot, he is the one that can get him out.
To be fair, I'd rather if I was the thing, I'd rather grab the dude with an actual doctorate than someone that knows how to fly helicopters. Not that I know how to do either of those things, but like, I see why you'd go with the doctor. Yeah. I love that scene. No, and well, speaking of that, let's kind of, because we have been bouncing around a lot. Let me kind of go by and we'll talk about like scene by scene, because there's a lot of like really key like standout moments in this film that are like talked about and referenced and done whatever. So I wanted to go around, and we'll start with Randy and kind of go around. What was like, and it could be from any point in the film, what was kind of like one of your favorite moments? Either like the practical effects were good, or the storytelling was good, or just like what scene like really stood out to you? We'll start with Randy.
To me, the most was when, like, that first crazy practical effect of, like, the dog transforming.
Oh, yeah. It was 20 minutes in, yeah.
Yeah, it was 20 minutes in. I was like, oh, so this is where we're going. I thought it was going to be one of those things where there's, like, a bunch of tension, or maybe there'd be another like 20 minutes of tension.
Yeah.
And then it'd be shit hits the fans from the 40-minute mark or something like that. But no, they just immediately are like, yeah, here we go.
We're in this. Let's move.
Yeah, it was definitely like a thing of nightmares.
It was great.
So
it also
it was genuinely like disgusting.
Yeah, it's such a good kickoff to this movie. Just like the tone and the feeling of it. I also do like,
just to further add to the aspect of like them not understanding what they're dealing with. What I like, I feel like the thing is the best definition of like it keeps going. Mm-hmm. It's like as soon as you think you've seen everything, it's like, oh great! Not only is the dog's head split open into this giant maw, and now it's spreading out tentacles, grabbing dogs, and it's spraying some sort of strange liquid on them, assuming. I kind of assumed to try to dissolve it and like assimilate it. But also like as before Childs lights it up, it then sprouts like I think another mouth and a massive like claw. And I'm like, oh
And
great.
tries to
As
like
if
climb up out of the ceiling or some
Yeah.
shit. It's like,
Yeah,
what
and
the
it's just
fuck is happening?
it just adds to it, like it's like that it keeps going feeling where it's just like as soon as you think you've seen it all, there's just more nightmare fuel
Oh
that this
wait,
thing can
there's
spawn.
more.
I love the
It
thank God
If
this
you order
thing.
now, you get an extra nightmare for
Yeah.
free.
Thank God the thing attacked on the one military outpost where there's heaps amount of both explosions and flamethrowers. I think that's the other reason I thought this was a military base, because why the heck do they have 6 flamethrowers?
That's also true. Like, why?
I mean, it came in
But I
handy,
will
but
say,
like...
one thing I do like too is, and maybe I'm misremembering the scene, but I feel like one of the reasons why it took a minute for Childs to like light up the thing inside the dog
Well, I thought it was
kennel.
just a horror, just
Yeah.
like in
Shock.
like awe and disgust all at the same
Yeah,
time.
Yeah.
it's also discussed, but I think if I remember correctly, like it just wouldn't start at first, also, which I love. I love
Oh.
it whenever in any time in like a horror film or anytime in like sci-fi where it's just like, oh, the technology doesn't work, which is authentic to real life, where it's just like, yes,
Yeah.
of course, the thing's supposed to be doing its job, doesn't do its job.
I think what you're also thinking, there's another moment like later in the film where like a thing pops up and it's Kurt Russell's flamethrower. It might even be the same one that just like
That's the scene I actually.
I think
no,
that's what you're
that's the
thinking
one
of.
where-
It's the
because
cow.
that's the
It's
one
the
where
blood
Windows-
test.
Yeah, Windows gets his head fucking bit, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, that's insane.
yeah. That actually no, I think that's the scene I'm thinking of actually. I just remember there was just one scene where I was like, oh my god, or not oh my god, but I was like, oh that's fun. Where it's just like, of course the equipment is not working right when you fucking need it to, because that's real to life. That always happens.
Yeah.
This is not at all directly tied to the thing, although I definitely think you can make the case that this game is based on it. But it's the Dead Space series, which basically is also about like these creatures that basically melt humans into goo to turn them into these horrific body monstrosities. So it's very, you could definitely tell it has very much Thing influences. But one of my favorite details that they have in the remake of the Dead Space game, the original, is that all the weapons that Isaac used for the most part are repurposed mining tools, because Isaac is an engineer. So all these are like engineering tools, like rivet guns and stuff. Whenever he runs out of ammo, he will actually curse out the manufacturer of the tool, which is such a engineer thing to do, where like whenever your tool doesn't work, you curse the company that created it, which is fantastic. I love that kind of detail.
Can confirm.
I would have loved if that was the sponsorship for this propane, like randomly Kurt Russell just goes, "God damn it, Texas Industries!" like hitting the fucking flamethrower.
Fucking Texas Instruments.
I think. Well, no, I know Texas. I don't know if Texas Machines does flamethrowers. I know they make miniguns and calculators. They probably do flamethrowers. No, that scene's great.
Randy, what's the company you curse out the most at work?
I'm not gonna say.
I was like that might out him. I don't know if
Say.
I don't think you should answer that question.
I won't.
The scene that I want to talk about, we'll definitely talk about the blood scene, because even Seth just brought it up. But the one that I also want to talk about is kind of the other moment where we referenced it before, where the one character has a heart attack or fakes a heart attack, depending on how you look at it, and they try to defibrillator him, and just hands go into stomach, chomps it off. And that scene is just so wild, because I love this movie where it's just like, okay, like a relatively tense scene tramps it up to 100 right when one of these things show up. And he bites, fun fact up by the way they did that effect, double amputee, sticking his arms in and then just getting chomped out and ripping off the prosthetics. He's just a W amputee. Because that's how they did it back in the day. You just find a guy that doesn't have arms, and that was it, which is great.
That is great. I think,
I
And
also
that
love
scene
the
is
little
like,
the head spider that just rips off. And it's just like, oh, it's so good.
I also like that scene a lot just because you talk about how the tension ramps up there. I think if especially a first time viewer, you know something is about to happen. You're just not entirely sure what. So to
Yeah.
just basically have it just like and the whole chest cavity opens up and eats this dude's arms is just the last thing you would expect.
I would say,
So that's like
unfortunately for me, I did know that clip.
Yeah.
Um,
It is a.
it
It's
may
kind
have
of
been like,
become. It's kind of become like, arguably the most famous scene or the most famous visual from the film is that chest teeth. Like a lot of people have
yeah, I was
seen
gonna
that
say that
image.
might have been, because I remember, and I assume it's still quite popular. I know I just haven't watched it recently, but like visual effects artist reacts, I'm sure I watched it on there and stuff. So
Yeah, I mean, still though, that scene's so freaking cool. And like the head that comes as it's like on the ceiling, the head comes off, and then I love the moment they're like, "All right, we got it," and then someone's like, "Hey, Captain," and they just turn the head, and the head's just in the corner, like I don't, like he's stuck. He's like, "I don't know where to go." It's like, you gotta be
so he
fucking
doesn't
kidding me.
He doesn't say. What I love is he doesn't even say, "Hey, Captain," because it's Palmer. I do remember this scene specifically, where Palmer's just looking at it and he just says, "You got to be
McCready.
fucking kidding me!" And no, it's Palmer. It's Palmer who says it.
Oh, it is. Oh, I just kind of.
Yeah, and then McCready lights it up, which I think is just funny. Just like them looking at it after all this bullshit just happened, and just going, "You gotta be fucking kidding me!" Is like the realest reaction I think you could
I
have.
love it. Yeah.
Um,
yeah,
It's interesting too because it's Palmer who says that, which by this point probably is infected. Which might be for its own. I mean, hey, like I said, everything's kind of up in the air. Who knows? But I do like the idea of like Palmer. Palmer did purposely out this one particular part of the thing to protect himself, which is very um, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting idea.
Yeah. Or it goes, and again, that's what I love about this movie. It gives you enough information, but doesn't give you every answer. Because again, you could see it like that, where it's like, oh, the thing protecting itself by outing a different part of it. Or you could see it like how I was talking earlier, of just like, Palmer doesn't know he's the thing. So he is still trying to kill the other one because it's not in danger.
Yeah, and like I said, we don't really have any definitive things. Where even the
And I wouldn't
people
want
working
I
on the
wouldn't
film,
want a
yeah,
definitive answer either. I should point out, I love the ambiguity of it.
yeah. And either way, like we also I think generally nowadays have an understanding that like there is a certain death of the author to most works of fiction now, where once you put a work of art out there, it's really no longer in control of the author. It is now at the whim of like the audience and how they decide to perceive it, um, which is fun. I think that's me personally. Like if I was like a creator, if I was like creating these stories, personally, I would, although I might have my own ideas of how I want a story, I think I would much prefer it if people saw it and came up with their own 26 different reasonings of why the story was like this,
Yeah.
than trying to take whatever I was trying to impart to them.
No, I think
I
it's
think
done
that
so
should,
well.
I think that should just be taken as like a badge of honor, so long as you're not doing it in a very dumb way, like um, people basically adopting the Punisher symbol for the wrong reasons.
Goodness.
um, yeah, but it's really interesting. I really do like. I also really like the that scene. Like in general, like those seem to be the two most iconic transformation scenes. Is
There
the
is
dog scene and the defibrillator scene.
There is one more because there's three big notable moments,
Yep.
and it's the last one that I was gonna bring up. It
Mhm.
is we've referenced it before, but probably the most like it's the film's arguable like best scene, or at least like one that like a lot of people reference and kind of have stolen or done similar ideas, is the blood test. Like you lock everyone in a room except for the main guy, and he figures out that like it will defend itself if it's in danger, and so he starts tapping and tapping. And I also love the fact that even despite when it is revealed what it is, and then that sick scene of it shooting up from the couch, and those other two guys that are just stuck on the couch like, oh my god, kill it, but like they're stuck basically attached to it.
Yeah.
And that's where Seth has that's what Seth was talking about earlier, like the flamethrower's not working. And Windows is just scared out of his mind, so he's not even using his.
It's crazy because it's like, if I remember, okay, correct me if I'm wrong, the guys on the couch are actually not the ones who dies. It's just Windows, right?
No,
I think so, yeah.
Because it's the guys on the couch are Childs and it was the captain.
Gary?
Yeah, it's Gary. It's the captain Gary, who everyone like kind of thought, and yeah, he immediately goes for Windows. I guess because he's like, it kind of just pops up and just you're like, oh well, these guys are already attached, so I don't need to worry about them. I'm gonna go for this thing because he has a weapon.
Yeah, strategically, I guess that doesn't make sense to go after like one of the people who is armed, or one of the people on the couch. Yeah, no, never mind. That gets this.
There is a theory. No, I know what theory you're talking about, but that's a theory at the end of the movie.
Well, the thing though is they both passed the blood test though afterwards, right? So they
well,
can't.
I guess,
neither,
yeah.
At this point,
yes,
neither of them can't be.
Yeah, at that point in the movie, it can't be. So no, it is just. I think that just goes more to me. I think the thing is a bit more thinking. It's a bit more conscious. So that's why it goes for. Okay, I know
the armed.
I go because it saw earlier in the film that thing, those two things that they're holding, can kill one of me because it did it earlier. So I'm gonna go for this guy, and then I'm gonna go for the other one.
That was also something I wanted to ask, and I don't know if we want to get into it now. If you want to hold it, and we can talk about it in a minute.
Yeah.
So is the thing a single organism, or is it multiple different ones? Is it a hive mind? What's happening?
I kind of it's kind of left ambiguous. That's what we were talking earlier. We don't really understand because you don't fully get it. It kind of is left to interpretation. But the way that I see it and the way that I kind of understand is every single, like the thing can almost multiply. Every single cell in it is its own organism, so it can separate. And like get something.
So does it share the same thoughts, the like memories? Because you were just talking about, oh, I saw it kill one of me earlier.
Okay, well,
so
even if it doesn't share the same thought,
that?
It was in the same room.
It could be. I mean,
it could. I mean, that could be a theory, but really also like the dude that does turn to a thing physically was in. Even if they do completely separate minds, he was in the same room and he watched it. He was there. He was the cook. He's the one that pointed out the other one.
I think the fact that this creature is so alien that we just don't understand. I mean, we could assume that it does, in a sense, like each cell shares some sort of intelligence and memory with each other. But it also, I mean, I've got to give credit to Randy on this. Like, I mean, we really don't know how much each of these cells is independent, because you saw whenever the mouth thing was getting lit on fire, the head tried to separate and escape. Like, it was like, all right, see ya, buddy. So like,
yeah. So I don't think it has recognition in regards to that. Like, we talk about, oh, it's intelligent, but I don't know how much of it is intelligence and how much of it's just survival instincts. Just I have to live.
That's the truth. We really don't know. Like, that's why the blood test works, is because McCready realizes that because whether it's being intelligent about it or not, since each part of this organism is solely focused on its self-preservation, that it will betray itself. Like, that's why the blood would shoot up and jump up, is because it's trying to preserve itself. And because of that, it betrays the rest of the cells, the organisms. So yeah, like that's just kind of the I guess the appeal of this creature is just that like we really don't know that we still don't know.
So, but yeah, that's kind of the difference. I also do love in that moment when McCready is doing the blood test, and it is revealed like, oh shoot, this one's a monster. It almost like takes his head off when he does it. When he does the test again, he doesn't try to like I'd like put it on a table and like do it from a distance or something, or kind of like stand away from it. No, he just has it in his hand, flamethrower kind of like tucked under his arm again. Like it's so just like this thing could rip your arm off, dude. Like. Just like, who cares? It'll be fine. I got this. Just like no safety precaution. I love it. But yeah, that scene is probably one of my favorites for obvious reasons. It's like such an iconic scene. Also is capped off by what Seth said earlier of, gentlemen, if you are done or whenever you have free time, will you get me out of this goddamn couch? He starts freaking out. I love all of that. The thing that I was going to, Budunchink, the last thing that I was going to talk about is the film's ending. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier of Kurt Russell's character realizes, well, I can't officially win. So I'm just going to break the game. I'm just going to flip the board. I'm going to throw scotch on the chess master. He's just going to, like, scorchers. Everything's done. And this is kind of like the big fan question of, at the end, Childs goes missing. He's not kind of there for the final thing. But McCready's there. He blows up the last, or what we assume he blows up the last thing. And then Childs kind of just pops up out of nowhere. And is like, hey, I was off somewhere else. And he's like, I bet you were. What do we do now? Like, we just wait and freeze to death. He says it cooler than that, but you get the idea. And so the theory at the end is Childs, is that the Childs that we saw earlier in the film, or is that the thing again? Or like a different thing?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people have also like said, like, just based on like Kurt Russell's acting, of like some people have theorized that like the bottle that he gives him isn't alcohol, because it has the label ripped off of it. It's just a bottle. So a lot of people think that's either gasoline or just whatever fuel for just like anything, like what he was using the Molotov's cocktails for. And the reason, and if Childs didn't react to it, then Kurt Russell would know that he's a thing, because they can't like eat organic. Oh, they can eat organic food, but they would react to it just like eating anything else. But if Childs spit it up, he was a regular person. Again, all of this is just fan speculation, because that's what a good portion of the movie is. But I wanted your guys' thoughts on that. Do you guys think that Childs at the end of it was the Childs that we know, or was that the thing again, just pretending to be Childs?
In my opinion, I think that is the thing.
Oh, you think it is the thing again?
Yeah, because it felt like he just kind of walked off for literally no explainable reason whatsoever.
Yeah, I forget what he said.
And I was like,
checking something. I forget the reason that he gave for like leaving his post.
Yeah, it was just some like bullshit answer.
I forgot too.
And I'm like, that is not reasonable at all. Like, no way in hell. And then I watched that, and then I forget what the wording to where Will put it. Will, I watched it with him, and he said that he thinks that both of them are the thing.
Oh, that's an idea. Yeah, they don't realize.
Well, that or is just like it only acts when it feels threatened, and it feels threatened by like when it doesn't recognize itself or something. And they neither are threatened. They just, here we are.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's an interesting idea.
Yeah, I didn't think about both, because I have certain feels like, oh, this one's a thing or that one's a thing. I didn't think like, oh, both of them are a thing, and they're just like trying to figure like, are you a thing? Am I the thing? Are we both a thing? Are we cool? Are we bros? Are we gonna kiss? Yeah, Seth, what's your idea?
I mean, in weird way, like mine is the exact opposite of Will. I think, and it ties into I think the themes of this film, which is the parent. A lot of it is like, yes, it's the creature itself, but a lot of their undoing is their paranoia and inability to work with each other. So my theory is that they are both human, and they both freeze to death because neither can trust the other,
Mm.
and it's so bad that they basically just allow both of themselves to die out rather than trust the other person. I think that's just kind of a running theme. So this is where Seth is going to get very into like the themes and stuff about the film. So
Before
in
you do
mine,
that,
yeah,
did you want? Because I have. Well, I guess you can do that, and then I can talk about a bunch. Because I have a bunch of behind the scenes stuff, but I think that's a
mhm.
separate topic. I can.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
they
that kind of is.
All right,
Mine is
sure.
about like an interpretation of like what this film is all about.
Sure, you can go with that.
Um,
Yeah, go ahead.
so what I think back to, and granted, we've already talked about that the author doesn't really matter. I think about what John Carpenter said, where he said that that he wanted this film to be emblematic of the fear of the times when it was made. I think this film is about. I think this film is a critique on masculinity and basically homosexual relationships, or rather our unwillingness to embrace
Okay.
it. Because I think back to the original, The Thing from Another World, and if you remember in that one, Drew, there was at least one woman in that film, and of course she was the love interest of the main character.
Yeah.
Um, it was almost like the
As is
directors were like, we
tradition.
just
Yeah.
yeah, it was almost like the director back then was just kind of like, we can't just have a film with a bunch of dudes, but
they'll think
um,
it's gay.
they'll think it's gay, so we got to have some woman somewhere. So that's where I get to this film, where you are stuck on this base with a bunch of men with each other, and and like even before the thing arrives, there's already a lot of tension and posturing with a lot of like masculine. Funny because if you watch any of these 1950 movies, like when they always seem to have this scene where one of the guys start freaking out and he's like, I saw it stood up and it tried to grab me and I ran, and then like the big Gregory Peck type character is like, get a hold of yourself, man, and he like smacks the shit out of him to like come back to normal. This film has that element, but no one comes back to normal. You have a bunch of guys stuck inside a base with each other. They're all dudes. They already have to like posture themselves as men. They have to be strong. They have to be assertive. They can't show much vulnerability or emotion around each other. So when shit starts hitting the fan, it just escalates the tensions even further because they do not trust each other. I also think about how this film could be a metaphor for the AIDS epidemic, because
I had that
because like
one.
no one,
Yeah. I had that
yeah,
one written
no
down.
one wants to, no one wants to reveal like if you have it, like it's not just like the disease itself, but outing yourself as well. At least at the time, that's what it's viewed as. And I think about this film, I'm like just critiquing these ideas of like why they fall apart is because why the group falls apart is, and granted, yes, this creature is developed very specifically to sabotage it, but why the group falls apart is their inability to show vulnerability in another man, to get away from like this toxic mentality of just you always posturing, using violence to always assert yourself over another person. And because these are a lot of things that are typically attributed uh, to like masculine characteristics. And I think this film is like critiquing that of like, this is why it doesn't work. So that's why you end up with something like McCready, where it's just basically, as you said, Drew, a scorched earth solution, because that's the only thing left, because no one trusts anyone here, that they might as well just burn the whole world down rather than risk any of them getting out.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I love that.
And
Oh, I'm
and I
sorry.
mean, like, and now, and granted, I'm a straight cis dude. I feel like Randy, like, and I'm going to ask you about this because I feel like, because you're very
Cis
open
gay
about
man.
your
Yeah.
yeah, you're an open gay man. Am I, like, granted, and I'm a cis straight dude. Like,
It's all right.
am
I'm
I?
not that much better. I'm a white gay man who's cis, so I'm
But
not that much better.
yeah,
But
but like, I would like to hear your thoughts on it because, like I said, that's just my perspective on it. I would love to hear yours.
so I didn't really think of it in that way, but having like listened to you talk about it just now, I can see that as a possible theme. Um, me being, I mean, I was just going into it more of just a fun, like sci-fi cosmic horror uh situation. Um, but listening to you describe it in that way, like definitely understand that. I don't know if it was the purpose of it, but I can see it as a theme that could be extrapolated out into like our, well, I say our modern times, but also like because it still is that way today, not to the same extent of like having to come out, but I say having to. I mean, if people don't want to come out, they don't have to, but like you could also almost say it's about uh and I've used this when talking to people about the coming out, about it's always terrifying to declare yourself in any way.
Hmm.
Um, whether it be something like socially that's like not cool or whatever, um, or something like that, instead of like anything that's like outside of societal norms. Like, it's not the same to be like, I'm gonna pick on football for a second, but like no one's like, yeah, I came out as like a Dallas Cowboys fan. Like, no one cares. I
Right.
Now,
mean,
if you're
maybe if you come from a family of like habitual like people who are like, I hate the
now
Dallas
if you said
Cowboys,
that now, if you
but
said that to a
like,
bunch of Bengals fans, they'd probably crucify you. Like all jokes aside, they would kill you. But
but
I get your
like,
point. Yes.
you see what I'm you see what
Yeah.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
get at
Yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
regards to like, but if let's say we'll throw it back to middle school where everyone's anxious and like they just want to be ignored and disappear, or at least that's how I felt. I'm sure I'm
Mhm.
not the only one.
And then back then, like, the reflex was to, like, anything you didn't like or was seen unnormal, like, the norm was to just be like, that's gay. Like, and it
Yeah,
was just used so casually back then.
yeah, but like, yeah, it's I could see it with that lens over it as being a possible theme for this movie.
Yeah. It's like the idea is like how come you don't have to how come no one has to come out to their parents as straight? It's like why do I have to make a
Yeah,
deal
sort
about it?
of.
Yeah. Um,
It's just having to affirm who you are that's
yeah.
outside of societal norms. So,
No, I like that. I
and be comfortable with yourself. So,
Yeah, of course. Uh, I also wrote down the AIDS metaphor, and I specifically wrote down because I remember watching an interview with because someone asked like John Carpenter about it, and it's exactly what you said earlier, Seth. Of just like the art kind of leaves the artist. They asked, I was like, was this like supposed to mean this? And they're like, no, but over time, I've kind of realized it's like a perfect AIDS metaphor. Like he almost like confirmed to himself, of just like, yeah, this kind of accidentally became such a good metaphor for it, um, which I think is like so beautiful. Of just like whether it's subconscious or whether it's just like a pure coincidental, it still like works on so many levels of this. With either what you're saying with your sexuality or with a disease or with anything, it's just like a thing you have to hide because it's not in like society's traditions. Um,
Right.
I also
Performative gender
yeah
roles, like those kinds of, like, elements. I think, when I think about it, it's like, I think there's a big reason why and this is just me speaking anecdotally, admittedly, but I'm one of those people who loves a good video essay, and we dig around. And for whatever reason, like, the LGBT community has very deep ties to horror films for some
Oh,
reason.
100%.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting to me of like why that community resonate, and I love them for it. Like I think that's great that they take ownership of like these films. The gay community loves Alien.
Oh, we
Don't
do.
know why,
We
but
do.
they love the Alien series.
Let me give you a little hint on like my interpretation of it, and like this is even as someone who's like, I would not classify myself as a horror gay by any means. I didn't really watch any horror movies until I got with Will, and Will was like, hey, we should watch some of these because I was a big baby, and I was like, I'm scared.
I want to take credit.
But-
I'm the one that made you watch Alien. I want to take credit on that.
Okay, well, Alien wasn't so much that I was scared, it's just like it passed me. I was like, whatever. Anyway, I think one of the main reasons that queer people enjoy horror films is that you're able to resonate with a lot of times horror films, and Drew's talked about this. He did a whole little
I was
mini-
waiting for
little
it.
mini
I
video
was
on
waiting
it.
to plug myself, and I'm glad you did it. Yeah.
With like the final girl and stuff like that, to where you feel like helpless, and that instead of a man's presence being over you and you have to like fight your way out of it,
Term I used, yeah.
it's more of a like societal pressure of like you feel this weight of not being who you're supposed to be or whatever. And I think I think that's a big part of it. And I think as queer people, we love an underdog story just because there's like societal things that in general we have to deal with that like straight people don't, of you know, with all that. So I think that's why. So seeing I think in general, like queer people really enjoy a like underdog story. And so a lot of times the final girl is obviously seen as like an underdog. How are you supposed to beat Michael Myers?
Yeah,
you know,
you're not traditional
this unstoppable
protagonist.
being.
Yeah, oftentimes like I do see where you're coming from, because it seems like a lot of like horror films are really good ones anyways. Oftentimes the hero or the last person standing is someone who defies normal gender or sexuality conventions. Like they kind of reject that to protect themselves. Like Drew talked a lot about like, you know, the nature of like phallic like, you know,
imagery.
horror.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, like whether it's like a creature using a knife or like an alien, like its tail or its mouth like piercing through, like it's very phallic in nature. But I was thinking about this with The Thing, where the monster in it seems very feminine. There's not an outright phallic feature about it. Now, granted, you could maybe argue the tentacles. You could probably argue the tentacles, but none of the humans die to the tentacles. A lot of the times it's to the mouth or mouth-like features, like teeth, the fear of what the term is, vagina dentata, which is the fear of vagina with teeth. I feel like that's interesting, that like the creature that destroys this whole station of men uses mostly like has a feminine feature to it. And I also think about every time it like spawns a new part of itself, like whether it's a new head or a new mouth or a whole arm, it's almost like birthing. It's like this fear. And I feel like this creature has very feminine aspects to it. Very grotesque, but like that's what I think of whenever it comes to it. And I don't know, like this is just me just kind of spitballing with like all the ways that I believe this film plays with gender and how it utilizes it.
Yeah. I don't even know if I even thought of like that is something like interesting to think about. Think of The Thing as like, because The Thing to me is amorphic, or just I never even thought gender related to it. I just more thought of it as either like a disease or a thing of nature. But that's interesting to think about.
I mean, it has to technically birth new versions of itself constantly if you think
Yeah.
about it.
No, I mean, I definitely see where you're coming from with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe this will lead, or we'll use this audio for a part 2 of gender roles in videos. Go watch that video. So I won't repeat myself because you all have seen the video. But no, I love this conversation so much. I have like the biggest smile on my face right now. I'm just like, yes, they get it. They watched the video. They understand. I'm not the first person to say that either. I appreciate you guys crediting me. Other people have said this way smarter than me, but no, I love this conversation. I love it when horror movies can have deeper themes than just like blood and guts and cool effects, which this film has a lot of too. But I love that where you look at it more of just like what is kind of the reason, or what is kind of like, you know, the feelings that this film provides. Like, how can we reflect on this into real life?
And what I like about it too, about having these conversations is, and I'm glad Randy spoke up so like about like the queer community and its relationship with like horror media, is that I think so often, especially when we look at old movies, there's this like dude bro mentality to take possession of everything. Like, it's like, yeah, Terminator was the shit. Yeah, we love fucking like Universal Soldier, and they want to parade around with their masculine features and stuff like that. But then you also see like the gay community is like, no, this is our shit too. You know, we have as much of a say in this as all of the rest of you. And I personally love that they can like take ownership of like this piece of culture and make it a part of who they are. And it's not something that's feels obvious, but it's, to me, I think it's amazing. So I'm really glad, Randy, you got to share your experience of, as you put it, the horror gays. We really love them horror gays.
Like I said, I wouldn't really classify myself as one, but like I've seen like other people like express that interest and their like views on it. So that's kind of, I put a little bit of my lens on it, but is mostly kind of like, this is what I've seen in regards to like people I follow on like Instagram and whatnot, and Twitter and whatnot, who are just like, I'm really excited for like the new what came out recently?
Heretic.
I know
Heretic. Go Heretic.
Sure.
Or A Quiet Place.
Like, you know, yeah, or A Quiet Place, or I know one that did really big, and I saw a lot of was Megan when that came out.
Ooh, Megan's really good. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Smile too, surprisingly good. I'm gonna stop now. But I will continue, unless there's more talk about themes. I'm going to continue on my little tangent about all the freaking amazing behind the scenes and how all these special effects were done, because that's super cool to me. So a lot of the credit, we've talked a lot about John Carpenter because he's the writer and kind of what built a lot. But a lot of this movie was done by a guy named Rob Bottin, Botin. He did like 90% of the special effects on this when he was 22 years old. And this was kind of like his dream child. He was the one that kind of first had the idea that the creature doesn't really have a true form. And that was something that both him and John Carpenter had the idea, and you'll see it in so many interviews of John Carpenter constantly saying, like, I do not want this to be a man in a suit. That is, like, the last thing I want an image of. And that's even why, like, John Carpenter famously doesn't like the movie poster. He's come around to it at this point, but originally he hated the movie poster for it because it was a guy in a suit. But Rob was kind of like the really big pusher of, like, I don't want this to be a guy in a suit. I want this to kind of be formless, which is almost impossible as a visual effects artist, because like, what does that mean, especially when everything's practical? But Rob would spend nights and nights in just like basically sleeping in the studio, just like would work on it all day, fall asleep in the studio, wake up, keep making this thing. So much so he actually gave himself pneumonia and had to and over film, like, because making this film over the course of a year, he gave himself pneumonia and had to be hospitalized for a very long time for like malnutrition. Point out though, from all the interviews I could find, nobody told him to do this. He kind of just like did it himself. Of just like he was so passionate about the project, he did not want to leave, and just like would stay there. And he was
Brother, chill.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I mean. It's just like, okay, calm down. But I mean, it shows in his work because like even today, like all of us immediately were like, that's so impressive. Like the creature with the dog, he added so many little details into the monster, and kind of his idea was like when it kind of goes full monster, you kind of see bits and pieces of not just what it was originally or the person it was most previous, but also like a little bit of like someone else in there, a little bit of like kind of different animal. Like when you really get into it, it's like it has like shark teeth for some reason. It has like octopus tentacle. It has very insect like qualities, like these weird bugs, which kind of, you know, if we want to keep poking at different theories, kind of brings up Randy's idea of like maybe it does kind of have a collective mindset, and it's like this is just a different one saw this creature and now it's kind of imitating it. Or maybe it was a creature that was in space that's just kind of doing that, because there's also the theory that this wasn't its spaceship, it just like got on something else. But there's so much attention to detail in every single one. And he also wanted to make a point that no two creatures look alike in any way. Like the dog creature is so different from the stomach creature, and that creature's so different from the head creature, and then the head creature is so different from the one that pops up on the couch, and then at the very end it's something completely different again. And it's just this.
Or it has like multiple things in it.
Yeah,
like the end one looks like it still had like dog in it and everything. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
Yeah, they do such a good, strong visual style here too. Like when we talk about this conceptually, I think it's very easy to see where the concept of this creature could quite literally become a mess, because it's a different mishmash of soup. And I think a less talented puppeteers, this would have just come out as a big damn mess, as a big stitching of like a bunch of different creatures. But there's just a strong sense of visual design creating this creature, but also making it believable in how it comes together. I think we also, we have to absolutely heap praise onto that, because like the idea of like, okay, you are being given this thing, this is a formless creature, and you have to like try to put it together with like all the elements of like other living beings. How are you going to do that? And the fact that it actually comes together and it still feels alien but also recognizable at the same time is a stroke of art. It is just such good like art design and work on this thing.
You see, this film was so inspirational for so many things. Like even just outside of horror, this concept of not seeing a monster really wasn't done too much, or like kind of this monster that's in all of us or can be hidden among us, if you want to look at its most obvious. I'm amazed that we've all restrained ourselves from saying it, but yes, Among Us is kind of the biggest of like, or what eventually became the biggest of like a spin-off from this. But like so many creatures, like even Monade, like this kind of like thing that hides inside you, or this thing that kind of becomes formless, is so inspirational to like horror films nowadays. Almost anyone who watches like either body horror or like monster like type movies, like you see how they're like, oh, they took this thing from the thing, or they took that thing from the thing. It's such like a monumental like piece of like horror media that like it's almost kind of became its own like genre that a lot of people don't recognize unless you're really into this kind of like this kind of field. And it's super cool. And like I will just always like Rob Bottin. I just like his name's probably said a lot in either costume or visual effects people, but his name definitely needs to be said more, because he is why this movie is the way it is, and he almost killed himself doing it. Again, not saying you should do that. Do not give yourself pneumonia making a project, but I love the passion, and I respect the passion so much that it's just so inspiring. So that is I'm going through. I think that is about all of my notes in this.
Of one, just teeny criticism
Yes.
that I'll just put forward. I know generally speaking, I do like a short horror film because it's because sometimes when they start to overstay their welcome, they can just get cheap and just do like jump scares and shit like that.
Yeah.
Not really this. I do wish there was maybe just an extra like 2 minutes or maybe like or 2 to 5 minutes of continually going like before, like after the dog happened, before the next person got like changed, or just a little bit more here and there of like, how does this work? Maybe a little more struggling with that, or a little bit more of what the fuck was that, or maybe just a smidge more on how did it work, and then maybe an extra 5 on, okay, now we know how this works, but let's have like maybe a long scene of like accusing people and stuff like that, instead of just, it's very short and then they just blow up and get mad at each other. But that's just, maybe it's just because I'm wanting something slightly different out of it than what it was. I know that's supposed to be kind of over the course of the movie, but I don't know. I think I would have liked maybe a more like investigation aspect at one point, or like a really in-depth like investigation scene.
I see where you're coming from with it though,
because it went from like, oh shit, the dog, to then very quickly, oh shit, the
doctor.
What was the guy's whose
Dr.
Yeah.
Blair.
Yeah, it was just kind of is a little too back to back. Well, not even necessarily the doctor, but who were the guys whose hands were messed up and then they burnt him? I've slept. I'm sorry, I don't remember his name.
His hands were messed up and they burnt him.
Yeah. He like walks out into the snow and he like looks up and his hands are fucked up and he starts screaming.
Oh, it's that. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, because he is a thing, and
yeah.
I don't remember his name either, because he is like kind of the first where they kind of realize it can take it. Well, because you need that person to be like, oh, it can take over people.
Yeah.
I don't remember his name either. I also will say I like that scene as well, because that is another like kind of indicator. Oh yeah, because he's not even the one that sabotages the ship, because Dr. Blair is. Yeah, that's the other thing of just like, I don't think that guy realized he was the thing until all the other guys showed up, and that's when it started screaming at him is when he's like, oh, I gotta self-preservate. Like it reminded him that's the monster, because he doesn't swing at everyone immediately. He just kind of sits there before he realizes like, oh, they know I'm not a creature. But I do kind of see what you mean. To me, I think it's fine. I think because there is scenes where they all kind of are yelling and accusing at each other. But I feel like the more and more you do that, the faster and faster it gets old. I almost kind of like the movie not giving us too many answers. But I don't know, Seth, what are your thoughts on it?
I can definitely see where Randy is coming from. I think he just wants to like have maybe a little bit more believability to when they do blow up, because there would probably be like I think what Randy's saying is there'd probably be a stage of paranoia in between them of just like going from not knowing at all about this creature to blowing up at each other and already making accusations. I get that. I'm on one end, I'm kind of the person who I think the film is kind of, try to use this term not so much, but kind of perfect as is, because I think it's very well paced. And I think going too far in one direction or the other can potentially mess with the really solid pacing that's already there. But I do agree that there could have been like a better stage of like setting this up. How did characters already get to this conclusion of what this thing was? I really think like me personally, one of the scenes I really love still is them visiting the Norwegian base. Like, man, like uh I like maybe there was a scene that stuck there a little bit longer, try to give a little bit more answers. I don't know. But I kind of get where Randy's coming from. I'm personally of the mind where I like it the way it is, but you know,
Yeah, I'm
I
not saying
completely
like
get
it's
that.
bad. I was just saying just from my perspective, I would have. I think an extra like 2 to 5 minutes of them discussing like or accusing each other, but not in a I'm gonna blow up in your face situation, in more of a investigating sort of situation rather than just oh it's you because blah 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 or whatever. It's like no, it's you because of this and like I don't know.
Yeah, plus, these are adults and some of them have military training, implied or otherwise, and like scientists and engineers. So you would kind of hope they would be maybe a bit more thoughtful. So I completely get
Yeah.
where you're coming from on that.
I can see it. Don't know if I don't know. I'm kind of with Seth. I was like, I don't need this movie to be longer, but might be a little biased. To be fair.
Not a whole lot longer. Just
Yeah.
just tiny. Just an extra like 5 or 2.
All right.
There's probably some sort of director's cut out there somewhere.
That has it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That has
Yeah.
the 5 or 2 minutes I'm looking for.
Sure. There you go. Yeah. All we need. Uh, but yeah. Think that's about. Seth, is there anything else that you want to talk about with this film? We went over a lot, but anything
I think
before?
I think the last couple of things I'll leave you with is like, if you really like this movie, um, I don't really want to recommend reading the original book because the guy who wrote it was actually a really big like kind of fascist and racist who wrote the original book. So
Hey,
I
Oof.
can't really
Maybe no
endorse.
good.
Hey,
Yeah, I can't
sometimes
really
you gotta
endorse
separate the
people
art from the
that-
artist, man.
Yeah,
Sometimes.
but but if you're interested, I do recommend if you like this movie, I really recommend people, even though it's an older film, I really recommend give The Thing from Another World a shot. I think while obviously I think The Thing here gives a lot more to chew on, The Thing from Another World is also a very fun 1950s era like alien type style film. So if you want to if as long as you know what you're getting yourself into, I still think it's a very fun film to watch. I can definitely see why John Carpenter said that this was a film that was very influential to his upbringing. I absolutely get why after watching it. The other one is let me think on this real quick. I believe it's called The Terror Express or something like that.
I know what you're talking about. Like
The Horror Express.
Yeah.
So the Horror Express is basically take the concept of The Thing, because this was also based on the book Who Goes There, of like the shape-shifting monster. But instead of being set on an Arctic base, it's actually set on the Trans-Siberian Railway. And it actually has Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing as the main characters on this train. So take a lot of the concepts about The Thing already. You have the shape-shifting creature. No one really knows who it is, and they're trying to figure it out. But instead of an Arctic base, it's set on a train. You have these two iconic actors in this movie as well. Also,
I am intrigued.
this is also the film where they did actually use the concept of the creature being telepathic. So there's that. I think the Horror Express feel. I haven't watched it, but I've seen like the trailer and some bits and pieces on it. It definitely, from what I can gather, and I really want to watch it at some point. it seems to be more supernatural leaning than science fiction and alien type style, which is, hey, cool, because basically they're all taking the same concept from the original book and just putting a different spin on it. Plus, I personally want to see Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee in action.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. The other thing I would recommend is be on the lookout in the coming year. Right now, there's a studio called Night Dive Studios. They specialize primarily in remakes and remasters of older games. This year they did the Doom plus Doom 2 collection, where they remastered the original Doom titles. They also did Star Wars Dark Forces, where they did a pretty solid remaster on that game as well. They are doing a remaster of the Thing video game. So just to illustrate what the Thing video game was, is it came out in 2005. It was like PS2, Xbox era type video game, and it is a survival horror game, of course, that is set in the immediate aftermath of the Thing movie. And what you do is, of course, because it's a video game in the mid 2000s, you play as a group of army soldier dudes coming to check out the base. So it's all army dudes. But the gameplay concept behind it, how it works is you are working with AI squad mates, and basically, yes, you're fighting your way through all of these like creatures, basically offshoots of the Thing, but also there is a chance that one of your comrades, your AI teammates, can become the Thing. And at the same time, your AI comrades can actually have an opinion about your character too. So if you're shown to be a good leader, you heal your teammates, you give them ammo and weapons to keep them supplied and ready for the fight, they're more likely to trust you. But if you do certain actions like accidentally do friendly fire, or you hoard a lot of ammo and weapons for yourself, or healing supplies to yourself, then your AI teammates become more suspicious, less likely to help you, and sometimes will even try to kill you because they think you're the Thing. So you have to balance all the resource management along with the rest of your squad. It's a very interesting video game, and it's really cool that it's getting a remaster soon. Like I said, it's set in the immediate aftermath of the film. It's already been said that it's basically once this game got started, it's basically like it's practically in its own continuity. But I mean, like, even John Carpenter, who weirdly enough is also like a pretty big gamer himself, is like, yeah, this game's cool. So keep an eye out for it.
Yeah.
It's gonna be coming out at some point. Night Dive has typically been really damn solid with their remasters, so I have no doubt that this will also be a quality product as well.
Yeah. The only other thing that I was going to bring up, and we won't talk about it for long for reasons, but have you guys seen, or have you guys been purposely avoiding the prequel, the Thing from 2011?
I'm aware of it.
Yeah.
I've seen some bits and pieces.
I will say, I know, like, the general consensus is hate the movie because that's what the internet says. With, like, good reason, too, because they kind of, like, do a lot of, like, unfortunately, do a lot of, like, the CG monsters, and they look even bad for 2011 standpoint. And there also is the complaint of they are just kind of, like, rehashing the same, like, trope. But my little defense for this movie is, first of all, they did some practical things. It's just unfortunately they had to CG over it for some reason, which sucks. But you know, this is the final product we get. But I'll also say the film, if you ignore the CG elements of it, it actually does have some clever ideas to deal with this concept. It kind of has the concept of, well, the Thing can only imitate like non-organic material to a certain extent. So if you have a tooth filling, it wouldn't know that. And they kind of play around with some ideas with that. And I think like it could have been well done. I think it just like a lot of people liked grossing on its flaws and really focused in on its flaws, which is why it's very popular to hate. Doesn't hold a candle to this. It's like it does not even come close to holding a candle to what we just talked about, or really even the 1950s one. But I don't want to like write it off as a inherent bad movie. It's okay, and it does have some smart ideas. But yeah, it is kind of like it is one of those things where to watch it, you do have to ask people to be like. And also, it kind of looks terrible, and there are some kind of scenes where you're like, oh, they're doing the thing again. But other than that, it's good. So it's one of those scenarios where I wouldn't like call anyone crazy for saying that they watched it and hating it, or just saying they don't want to watch it because it looks bad. That's a completely valid reason. I'm just saying, I just want to put my 2 cents in. It's not as bad as everyone says. And that's the best thing I could say about the movie, which should tell you a lot. But with that said, I think that is everything with John Carpenter's The Thing. But that is not everything for this podcast. For at the end of every podcast, we give you our fresh picks of the week. This is what we've been playing, watching, or listening to in between recording these podcasts. So, Seth, my friend, what have you been playing, watching, or listening to as your fresh pick?
So, since it's been a good amount of time has passed, I do want to like recommend a band. I'm not sure if they're still on their North American tour right now. It might be wrapped up or close to wrapping up. But last month I went to Atlanta to go see Mass of the Fermenting Dregs. They are a indie rock. I've heard the term shoegaze before. I don't really pay too much attention to like genre names because I'll admit I'm not the best at knowing what the hell any of this means. But Mass of the Fermenting Dregs, they're from Japan. This is like I believe their second U.S. tour. I'm not entirely sure, but they were phenomenal. I love them to death. I started listening to them this year, and I absolutely love their stuff. If you're into like a little bit of like post-hardcore kind of feeling music, it's a 3-piece band. You have this lady, she is the singer and bassist and like one of the original founding members. Then you have a drummer, and then you have a guitarist, and that is it. It is just 3 people in this band, but they are a absolute delight. They have really good, strong vocals. A lot of their music is very energetic, fast-paced. They have like a lot, like just really good, just I don't know how else to describe it. Just really good, just tasty guitar riffs throughout it. I just fucking love the melodies that they have going on. It's such a great band. If you can see them live, absolutely. They are just the sweetest people in person, an absolute blast, and they know how to like work a crowd really well. So you will have a great time if you see them live. If you can't, that's fine. I would recommend checking out like some of their albums. They have like their self-titled one they came out with in 2008 that's only about 7 to 8 songs long. There's also like New World Order, Awakening Sleeping. That's probably the most popular one. Just check out one of their albums. I would recommend just in general, just look up Mass of the Fermenting Dregs. Check them out. They're amazing. I even bought a skateboard from them, and then I customized that thing.
Hell yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's all like the trucks and the wheels and all that. So it's an amazing band. I love them dearly. Give them a shot.
All right. We'll definitely have to keep an eye out for it. Randy, it's your turn. What have you been playing, watching, or listening to?
So, I've been playing a little bit Space Marines 2
Never heard
with
of
you.
it. Oh, what?
Yeah.
Me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Um, like it's one of the it's a very fun. I never played the first one. I have no understanding of the Warhammer lore, but it's just good fun. You're just running around, shooting aliens. Good, just like bloody fun.
Yeah.
Not to
Carrying.
like, yeah, not to the same extent as like Doom, but like it's up there.
It
Oh,
definitely has some
yeah,
Doom vibes.
it's up there.
Yeah.
It's fun. There's a bit of like Doom vibe because
Yeah.
I mean you even have like a chain sword, which is like, or maybe
Yeah.
that's more uh
It's a weapon Doom guy would
Gears
use.
of War,
Yeah.
but it is something that the Doom guy would use. He would
Yeah.
use a chain sword.
Mm-hmm.
No, definitely.
Um,
Like it's a really that's one of those games where it's like it is fun. It knows exactly what it is, and like it has all this.
what it is fun.
Yeah, it has all this deep lore that all the Warhammer nerds, like our friend Matt, like gets super into, and they're like, oh, this character's from this book and all this, but it also fully realizes that it's like it's just blood and guts and destroying xenophils, and like while you're fighting, you go, brother, I need ammo, and it's like you just gotta get into it. I got no idea.
Yeah.
All I know is like I know a little bit of the lore of Space Marines ones, but I'm still just like, who cares, brother, I have my ultimate, yeah.
Yeah, it's just mindless fun.
Yeah, I've also played a little bit, not super much, but I played a little bit of both their like kind of like operations mode and their multiplayer. Both exact same as the campaign. Fun. Some of the classes need a bit of balance. I think the assault is really needing buffs, especially since there's a grappler class called the Vanguard that's just better assault. But honestly, like, this isn't really a game for balance. It is just kind of like swinging around an energy sword, shooting big machine guns on these hulking characters. So it's definitely a game that knows exactly who its audience is and what it's trying to do.
It's just fun.
Yeah.
It's blind fun. Just maybe catch it on sale, on Steam sale or something, or just if you got money to burn and you are looking for a new co-op game to play with your friends. I mean, it's fun.
Yeah, it also looks really good. Like, I mean, this is it's a kind of a neat like technical benchmark as well, considering like how good it looks and how much stuff is on screen at a time. Like,
Oh yeah,
there's massive ass hordes.
Yeah, like the hordes are massive. It's pretty insane.
So yeah, definitely check that out. And I guess that makes it my turn. Keeping the theme of horror movies, especially, I know we're past quote unquote spooky season, but I want to talk about this still. My most recent movie I watched as of last night is Heretic. Super well done movie. It is one of those movies where it's like you're not going to be scared because of either jump scares or anything, or even that like the villain's very threatening. It's one of those where it's like it's scaring you through, and I kind of quote my own Letterboxd review. It's scare you through ideas, and it's really just like a dude in a room talking to two girls, and he's just scaring you out of like philosophical debate, and also he might kill you, but you don't even know that. He's never saying it threateningly. And it's one of those like movies that's like this could be so boring and just kind of flop on its head, but it really does work on a lot of levels, mainly because of also like Hugh Grant's performance, who is kind of the main antagonist. But also like the other two actresses do really well. Sophia Thatcher and Chloe East, really talented in this, for again a movie where like most of it is just three people sitting in a room and just talking, and that's a hard movie to keep engagement in, but I think it's done a very good job. It's not completely perfect because there are a lot of moments where you're just like, hey, you have a knife in your pocket, just stab him. He's an older guy. I know it's a dude and you're two young girls, but it's still like, you have a knife, just stab him whenever you feel like it. But once you kind of suspend your disbelief for that, it's definitely a worth time if you want to kind of, again, like we were talking about with this, have a bit more of an intellectual horror movie. A thinking man's horror movie, if you will. But with that said, that is all of our fresh picks, and that is all of our horror movie, or at least thing-related topics for now. Maybe we'll talk more about it when a certain video game comes out. But I wanted to thank Randy for not only watching this movie I have constantly talked about forever, but also coming in and talking about it on this podcast.
It's been fun. It was a good recording.
Yes. And Seth, as always, I want to thank you for coming on and helping elevate this conversation as well.
It was a pleasure.
Yes. And the most important people, I want to thank you all, the viewers or listeners, for either watching or listening to this podcast. We appreciate you. If you want more horror-related context, please go look up what we referenced earlier, my little video essay about gender roles in horror movies. That's one of my favorite videos I made. I probably should make a similar one or an updated one because I'm better at editing now. But definitely check that out. Check out a lot of our shorts. We got a bunch of other video talk about movies, not just horror-related ones. But thank you all for watching, and stay safe out there. Bye.